What is going on today, guys? White man wearing an officer uniform designed for Dave Blunts here. Welcome back to an episode of Plugin Police, and today we'll be checking out Fabfilter Pro Q4. Now, there's been a lot of videos coming out about this plugin lately. Before it even came out, actually. Before it was happening since before it came out, and I was guilty of it too. One thing I've noticed is there's been reviews happening within a day of it coming out. The goal of this video is to give an actual detailed, in-depth review. Not saying they're phoning it in. What I am saying is it's pretty difficult to do a thorough review in one day. Now, Pro Q4 came out faster than I think Fabfilter intended it to, because they put a coming soon video, and then within a day, it was cracked by R2R and uploaded to Russian tracking websites. And shame on you if you downloaded that. How could you? I will say this, if I do have a cracked copy of it, I confiscated it from a criminal. I don't have a cracked copy of it. So unless you were just born on the planet yesterday, Fabfilter Pro Q is one of the most standard EQs you can use in the music industry. Now, is it everybody's favorite EQ? Almost, I would say. Now, version 4 has added quite a few things. I'm gonna go through all the different features. We're gonna explore it and see how we feel about it. To keep in mind here, the price of the plugin is $179. I believe it is 50% off if you have Pro Q3, and there's also a free 30-day trial. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slap an instance of Pro Q4 on every single track here, and you're going to see why momentarily. So you're going to want to use the VST3 version of Pro Q4 if possible. Generally, it's like that for pretty much any plugin, but in particular with this one, you're going to want the names to transfer over of your tracks. Click here. And voila, you can see all the tracks at once here. Now, it works very fluidly. I'm really impressed by this. You can scroll through it with the mouse wheel. You can hold control and scroll with the mouse wheel to zoom in or out. You can draw points. Like, they really outdid themselves here. But just the way it works is what's impressive. And I can turn on collision detection here. You see this? So whichever EQ instance you decide to click on the collision button for, it will show you where there are EQ clashes. And this is for this particular audio with the other instances of Pro Q4. Another interesting feature that you probably already know about, you've probably seen it everywhere already, you can draw in the EQ. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Not something I would personally use. You know, maybe if you have a quick idea and you want to get it out there really quickly, maybe if you want to get it done as fast as possible, this might be something you want. Personally, I don't know how often I'll be using this feature, but it's neat nonetheless. Now, you still have the option to work on it in the traditional way. So one thing to note here is when you're in this instance list, if you want to get back to the regular, just standard EQ area, you click the X here. I don't know, at least for me personally, maybe I'm just really stupid. It took me a minute to figure that out. I was figuring like maybe, hey, you just double click on it. Maybe you double click on the name. Finally decided to click on the X. I realized that it takes you there. So I don't know, maybe there's just something wrong with me. That didn't seem intuitive, but maybe they may want to add ability to switch in and out of the instance list, like maybe keeping that same sort of tab here that you can click in or out of. Keep in mind, this is really nitpicking in my opinion. So let's say I want to clean up some of this collision here, some of this muddiness, do a little dynamic EQ here. Set the sidechain to come from the kick. Now, one thing great that they've added here is the attack and release feature. I'm having the 808 duck from the kick, or this band here. You know, I'm gonna want to attack as fast as possible. Maybe turn it all the way up so you can hear it really well. So the spectral dynamics here might be a better option. You can click on this button here to make that work. Another really useful thing here is how you can shift and, you know, get like a very specific slope. And now it's hard to say how much it really matters that you can specifically change the exact value on the slope. How much of a difference are you really going to hear, but it's a nice option to have. Then you have different EQ options here. You got clean, subtle, and warm. If we're doing some additive EQ, you know, warm might be a good idea. Now look at how many instances we have and like how many different things we have going on. Still only hitting about 12%. So the CPU usage looks pretty good. For reference, I also have several instances of Devious Machines Duck, Serato Sample, a couple instances of Decaps Knock plugin, OTT, and maybe a couple other small things as well. But my conclusion is it doesn't seem more heavy on CPU usage than Pro Q3 was, at least in my opinion. If it is, it's by a very small amount. A lot of the complaints I'm gonna have are like pretty nitpicky. As far as like on the surface stuff, it nails it across the board. It nails it across the board. I like the user experience, I like the UI. There's really no complaints to have about this thing, in my opinion, so far. I can't really think of one. Like, you can maybe complain about the price, but the price is not that bad for what you're getting here. Like, especially like how good of an EQ this is. I'm gonna try hard to nitpick here, because that's basically the only thing we can do with this. I guess this makes sense, the reason why it works like this. So when you have the instance list pulled up here, oh, what the hell? I might have found a bug. I think I found a bug. Yeah, I've made, unless this is like working in a way that I fucked it up somehow. Okay, there we go. I made all the instances disappear except for one after doing this little pin thing. You know, it's just a little bug. So one thing I really like about this instance list especially is the collision detection they have added here, because it allows you to try out different options when it comes to subtracting and adding EQ in different instances of Fabfilter very quickly. You can audition them very quickly. Like, I could see if I want to subtract here on this one, or I can click here and see if I want to subtract here instead, right? And I could just like turn this one off. Be like, okay, do I like that better? Or do I like this one better? I think I like the other one better. Maybe even do a little bit of both. And the cool thing is you can see it in real time. Like, for instance, if I boost EQ here, I can see that it becomes more of a problematic collision here, right? And if I subtract them more, as you can see, it's not happening as much. Like, hey, you can argue all you want, like, hey, my stock EQ is just as good, you know, it works just as fine, sounds just as good. Probably, I don't know if it sounds just as good, but functionality-wise, come on now. And I should state, this is not sponsored by Fabfilter. I don't think they probably don't even like me, especially after that reaction video I did. I was kind of clowning on them a lot. I didn't really know how good this was until I saw the Dan Worrell presentation. One thing you do need to be a bit careful of is when you're scrolling through this list here. If you hover over a point using your middle mouse wheel, you may accidentally change one of your points. So it's definitely better to scroll with your mouse wheel on the side here. I've actually seen Mixbus TV make a similar complaint, except he made what I consider to be a mountain out of a molehill about it. His complaint was that in the instance list, anytime you click around, it creates a new node. And I guess he's constantly fidgeting, but claims he doesn't drink coffee. Personally, I don't experience this issue. I also do not have Parkinson's. For anyone with that issue, you can turn off the setting to create a point with a single click in the settings. One thing I'm really appreciating about this is the full functionality while working in the instance list. I really think that is the greatest selling point of this, other than the stability. Fabfilter generally has some of the greatest stability as far as plugins go. Now, I've recently seen a video from Jeff Manchester, the man, the myth himself, semi-complaining about how it didn't have AI in it. It's hard to say if he was complaining. It seemed like he was trying to complain without really complaining, if that makes sense. Now, personally, I think it's great they didn't add AI into this. When you really dig into all the features they've added in here, it makes perfect sense why they didn't add AI. Like, why bog this down? Why bog down this perfectly well-crafted EQ? You know, it basically does everything you want it to, almost. There's a few things I think they could have added. They're probably saving that for Pro Q5. So sadly, this video is not only going to be me glazing. I actually do have some small criticisms for it. Yes, there are more things that could be added. One in particular being the ability to EQ transient and sustain separately, as well as pitch tracking EQ, which are very niche things, but some things that people would like nonetheless. Sometimes I want them myself, especially if you're an EQ savant. AI is another thing they could consider adding, as well as more EQ modeling types, more filter types, etc. It doesn't have everything you could ever want in an EQ, but I would gladly sacrifice those features for what we have received. The workflow is pretty much the fastest out of any EQ you have at the moment. The workflow of your daily driver EQ is basically the most important thing. The speed at which you can do many of your EQ needs is unmatched by any other EQ. The instance list, the ability to work within each node within the instance list, to set up dynamic spectral, dynamics, whatever you want. You can't beat that. What you want other than great sound and low CPU usage is workflow. And what this presents to you is workflow. So if for some reason Pro Q4 isn't enticing to you, there are a number of alternatives. The first would obviously be a stock EQ from your DAW, but generally they lack a lot of the great features you get in EQs like this, such as the user experience, the collision detection, linear phase, etc. And let's be honest, if you're using something such as Reaper EQ, you're going to be suffering from depression. The next alternative is Kirchhoff EQ. No, I'm not showing Fabfilter Pro Q4 on the screen right now. That is Kirchhoff. Not only did they copy Fabfilter's homework, but they basically stole their whole book bag, lunch, tests, exams. Now it is a bit cheaper than Pro Q, coming in at $99. The normal non-sale price is $299, but I'm pretty sure it's always on sale, which might be illegal, but whatever. One of the benefits of this EQ are the various vintage EQ types that you can select. There are a few different filter types as well, such as the sword filter. Kirchhoff lacks the instance list and spectral dynamics section though. Next on our list is Tone Booster's EQ Pro. It has 530 filter types and shapes. Yeah, a bit overwhelming for sure. It has dynamic EQ, EQ matching, but most importantly, it has many color schemes. Some of the filters allow you to EQ transient and sustain separately. It has more than this. I'm honestly getting EQ'd out at this point though. Another great thing is the price point of this one, the Pro version only being 59 euros. The next alternative is TDR Nova, which is free, and it's honestly light years ahead of stock EQ. It is quite a bit. Parametric EQ, dynamic EQ, frequency selective compression, multi-band compression, wideband compression. There are a few limitations though. Each instance only has 4 bands, 6 if you use the paid edition. The UI and user experience are nowhere near as fluid as Pro Q4, which is my biggest critique of it personally. Is it impossible or hard to use? No, but it just doesn't feel as fluid, and especially with upgrades to Pro Q4, it's nowhere near as fast. These are all great EQs, and there are many more alternatives, but I think that's enough for this video, at least ones that are similar to Pro Q4. They all have their places where they shine or fail to shine. I don't really have a favorite personally. Pro Q4 is probably going to be my daily driver going forward just because of the workflow. Other than TDR Nova and stock not being my #1 choice, unless I absolutely have to use those, the UI and user experience is pretty important in plugins, especially EQ, because it's going to be one of the most common plugins you're using during mixing. The workflow is really what is the selling point here to me. I mean, they could technically add more to these little instances in here. They could add more functionality because it's not fully functional. I wouldn't say it's fully functional, but it has enough to do the main things you want to do when you're working on these multiple instances. You know, generally subtractive EQ, maybe a little additive EQ. You can still do all the dynamic stuff within these multiple instances. It's a little bit harder to work with just because it's not as decked out. You're gonna have to like right click and whatnot. But I would say I'm far from disappointed with this. Like, I'm not sure what I was expecting them to add in Pro Q4. I actually did not know what they could add at this point other than some of the things they didn't add, which to be honest, I'm not even mad that they didn't add it. Like, one thing they could have added is pitch tracking. You know, for instance, if I wanted to have it follow different frequencies, like let's say I have a bass line and it's changing and the resonances are changing essentially, and I wanted a sidechain with a kick, you could still do that with spectral dynamics. They don't have like a way to track the pitch of it, something like Surfer EQ, but it's not really a big deal because there's ways to work around it. And if you really want that exactly, you could use Surfer EQ. I'd prefer not to though. This UI is vomit inducing. So I'm gonna give this plugin a 10 out of 10 actually. 10 out of 10. There's not much to complain about. I did find that one bug earlier, and I'm gonna chalk that up to them having to force release it because I'm like 99% sure R2R posted it before they did. Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on Pro Q4? If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. I post videos like this almost every single day. I'm trying to do one every day in December. I've missed a little bit of a day here and there, but it's usually within 24 hours. A lot of times I post music production news as well. If you want to support the channel and what I do here, consider joining my Patreon or becoming a channel member. For as low as $5 a month, you get access to exclusive content, outtakes, and other goodies. I'll see you guys next time.